No genre of cinema is as synonymous with remakes, reboots, reimaginings, reimagings, or whatever the phrase of the day is, as the horror genre. For the most part, these do-overs often end up falling way short of their predecessors, being a soulless, uninspired cash grab. However, there are some remakes, yes, even the bad ones, that manage to do at least one thing better than the original. And with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 things horror remakes did better than the original. Number 10. Black Christmas, Claire's Relatives. The 2006 Black Christmas is so-so at best, and that's being generous. Feeling needlessly excessively violent and somewhat cruel. Plus, yeah, there was all the eye stuff too. One thing it does do better than the hugely influential 1974 original though, involves the character of Claire. In both of these movies, Claire is one of the first of the sorority girls to bite the dust at the hands of the film's creepy killer. And in both cases, a relative of Claire's turns up looking for her. In the first film, this relative is Claire's father, who ends up being a fairly uninteresting and dull character. However, the remake fares a little better by having this relative be Claire's half-sister, Lee, played by Final Destination favourite Kristen Cloak. Lee is a surprisingly entertaining addition to the remake, winding up as one of the better elements of what at times becomes a bit of a train wreck of a movie. Number 9. One Missed Call, Pacing. To highlight just how bad and unscary the 2008 One Missed Call remake is, it currently has a rare 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes from a total of 80 reviews. Yep, that's bad. That said, the 2003 original Japanese One Missed Call has a few issues of its own, one of which is its excessive length, clocking in at just under 2 hours. Now, with 2 hours, we're not exactly talking some 4-hour extended edition of the Lord of the Rings movie, but simply put, One Missed Call didn't need to be 2 hours, with its story feeling stretched and plenty of runtime being padded out. For the remake, that at least wrapped things up in less than 90 minutes. Yes, it's as awful remakes get, but it was at least more economical with its pacing. And if the original had that brisker runtime, it might have fared better in avoiding some of the problems that it faced. Number 8. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger's backstory. To be clear, the 2010 Elm Street is awful, unnecessary, and totally wasted Jackie Earle Haley in a role he could have done so much with had he had better material to work with. However, one thing the remake holds over Wes Craven's 1984 Elm Street is it handles Freddy Krueger's backstory a little better. In the original, Freddy was a child murderer, killed by the parents of Springwood after he avoids jail on a technicality, with this all conveyed through exposition. In the 2010 film, Freddy gets a far nastier, far more effective origin story that's partly shown through creepy flashbacks. While Wes Craven did originally design Freddy Krueger as a paedophile, that element of the character was dropped from the first Elm Street, but in the remake, Krueger had sexually abused the main characters at their nursery when they were children, making Freddy an even more sickening, disgusting figure. Yes, it was hard to stomach at times, but it was effective in making Krueger an even bigger creep. Number 7. Halloween, The Brackets. Nancy Loomis and Charles Cyphers do a great job as Annie Brackett and her sheriff father Lee in John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween, but Rob Zombie's 2007 remake gives the Bracketts a little more spotlight and character depth. Granted, the material she was working with may not have always been the best, but Danielle Harris absolutely did a great job in elevating her take on Annie in Zombie's first Halloween. Likewise, the beloved Brad Dourif was able to deliver a more nuanced take on Sheriff Brackett in that movie and its sequel. Benefiting these characters even more is that, unlike in John Carpenter's movie, Annie Brackett actually survives her attack from Michael Myers in Zombies remake, and Annie's eventual death at the hands of Michael in Zombies Halloween 2 was one of the highlights of that extremely ropey sequel. Number 6. Friday the 13th, The Set Pieces. Marcus Nispel's 2009 Friday the 13th is a very solid and entertaining picture, pulling inspiration from the first 3 Friday the 13th movies. While the original Friday the 13th is an iconic film that launched one of the greatest franchises in horror history, it's not actually all that scary, especially when watched through modern eyes. For the remake, we have a highly brutal, thrilling, and punchy horror film that offers more intensity and sense of overarching dread than the first film. Of course, this is also helped by the 2009 movie being able to bring Jason Voorhees to the fore fairly early in the film, with the original movie obviously focusing on Jason's mother Pamela as its main villain. And where Jason is concerned, genre fave Derek Mears does a phenomenal job in making Jason such an imposing, relentless, powerful presence, arguably being only second to the legendary Kane main horror when it comes to the greatest depictions of Jason Voorhees. Number 5. Dawn of the Dead, The Scares. George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead is absolutely an all-timer of a movie, an iconic, hugely inspirational, massively entertaining horror picture. But for all its strengths, the approach Romero took was a satirical one that was more comedy horror and social commentary rather than outright scares. On that front, Zack Snyder's 2004 remake is a far more intense beast. Granted, the social commentary largely ditched, and some of the characters aren't all that great, but in terms of set pieces and faster, more frightening zombies, the remake excels, managing to bring something different to the table from just retreading the original movie and being a remake just for the sake of a remake. Number 4. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the sounds, visuals and special effects. The 1956 Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a brilliant, terrifying slice of science fiction horror that's one of the finest political allegories of all time. However, the 1978 Body Snatchers is also a fantastic movie that in some ways outdoes its predecessor. Given the advances in filmmaking, the remake is more memorable on a technical level than the original, with chilling camera work and superb sound design. And this do-over also has some brilliant special effects work at play, and some properly horrific, gnarly body horror sequences, all adding up to a remake that might not be as essential as its 1956 counterpart, but that stands out as one of the greatest horror remakes of all time, and an element of a conspiracy thriller in the vein of something like All the President's Men. Number 3. Let Me In, The Romance. This Chloe Grace Moretz and Cody Smith McPhee fronted remake of Swedish vampire classic Let the Right One In is actually pretty darn solid across the board, even if not everything always entirely clicks. Let the Right One In is clearly the better movie, being more complex and a little more ambiguous, but Let Me In does offer a better love story in many ways, since there's more warmth and emotion between its lead duo of Abby and Owen. The original film is scarier and offers a better exploration of certain themes, but Let Me In has the better romance, making each movie both worth watching as you can appreciate them in different ways. Plus, they're both actually, pretty good. Number 2. Susperia The Story. Dario Argento's 1977 Susperia is a great horror movie full of energetic scares, powerful violence, brilliant visuals, and that goblin soundtrack. But it's also very much a visceral experience that's a little light on story, clocking in at only 90 minutes. In contrast, the superb 2018 remake packs a more dramatic punch thanks to its layered, haunting story and historical context. There's also great performances, especially from Tilda Swinton, that stick out when compared to the good but not particularly memorable performances in the original. Argento's Susperia is a kaleidoscope, brightly coloured nightmare that rarely lets up in its intensity, whereas the remake takes those fantastic visuals and mixes them with horrifying violence and a powerful tale about national trauma, guilt, motherhood and power. Is the remake a better movie? That's a tough one, but it certainly has a stronger narrative and a better finale. Number 1. It. Literally everything. I absolutely love the 1998 miniseries, with that scaring the life out of a young me when it first aired on BBC back in the day. But realistically, the 2017 It is just better on pretty much every single level. Andy Muschietti's first It movie has better acting, better writing, better pacing, better editing, and is more faithful to the source material, plus has plenty of gore. Of course, Muschietti also had the benefit of far more advanced technology and techniques, had an R rating, and his two It movies had a combined $120 million budget, compared to Tommy Lee Wallace's two-part miniseries having a $12 million budget. Still, the 2017 film is everything that's good about the miniseries, but just better, and ultimately more terrifying. Sure, It Chapter 2 might have been let down by some wonky CGI and a fumbled finale, but the first movie is fantastic, and even as great as Tim Curry was as Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård was afforded the opportunity to deliver an even more disturbing, sinister performance as the Dancing Clown, which is an opportunity he absolutely made the most of.